What's your favorite hunter build right now? Would you prefer that I just show you right now? In fact, not only is it my favorite hunter build, but it's actually the same build that's allowed me to clear the most recent contest mode raid, Desert Perpetual, which is honestly, in my opinion, the hardest contest mode raid in Destiny history, and this build got me through it, along with my 5 incredible teammates. But this build was instrumental for my performance. Before I show you what the actual build is, all of the mods, aspects, fragments, subclass, all that goodness, let me first show you what it's capable of. And to do that, I am going to contrast the best part of the build with a Celestial Nighthawk Golden Gun. This Celestial Nighthawk hits for 9901 on Carl. It says 6601 on the damage leaderboard. Their bugged damage numbers are offset, but keep that in mind. 9901 on the boss, 6601 on the DPS leaderboard. So to compare it with the best part of this build, we're just gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this. And we hit him for 3,380 something on the actual boss itself and 4,807. So this build does about 2/3 of a Celestial Nighthawk Golden Gun Super simply with a grapple melee. But wait, there's more. Whilst it's not essential to the core functionality of the build, you do not have to do this if you don't want to, or if you don't own the gun. If you do happen to own the Navigator Trace Rifle with its catalyst that allows you to special reload to create a grapple tangle point, then anytime you encounter a boss target, you can do this. Which was basically me hitting for, give or take, like 3.5 Celestial Nighthawk Golden Guns in about a 10-second period. So, yeah, it's pretty good. This is a variation of the build that I was running basically non-stop last episode for the entirety of episode Heresy. Every single piece of difficult content, all the solo flawless dungeons I did, all the raids I did, all the Grandmaster Nightfalls I did, anything I did was this build. And I already know a ton of people are going to ask what shader I'm using because it's the coolest shader in the game. I will get to that later in the video. But first we got to talk about the actual build itself. Exotic class item, relativism, inmost light, Surturacne. Using an ability empowers the other two abilities, granting them improved energy regeneration. And then, of course, Spirit of the Surturacne, gain Woven Mail whenever you use your grenade. And Woven Mail actually is dual purpose in this build at this particular moment. Obviously, we have the part of Woven Mail that gives you stupid amounts of damage resistance, which is spectacular. But there's actually another benefit to Woven Mail at the current moment in the game that we're going to go over momentarily. You'll notice that in this class item, you might be expecting me to use something like Spirit of the Liar for the bonus melee damage, because seemingly it's a melee-based build. You might be expecting me to use Spirit of the Syntheseps, because that'll give me bonus melee damage to both my melees and my grapple melee. And those are good choices. If you have those available to you and you want to use those options, I more than encourage you to do so. But Spirit of Inmost Light and Spirit of the Surturacne are absolutely spectacular for two things. Ability uptime, which ability uptime can give you any amounts of benefits, right? Depending on what abilities you're using. And Spirit of the Surturacne is huge not only for survivability with the damage resistance from Woven Mail, but also, like I said, at the current moment, it's going to give you another benefit in the game. Like I said, this is the build that I used to take me through the contest mode of the most recent raid, and in contest mode activities, survivability is absolutely gigantic, sometimes even more important than extra damage in certain situations because of how lethal everything in the activity is. I also want to mention, huge thing here for this build, if you do not have the Inmost Light Surturacne exotic class item, or any exotic class item with Surturacne, or any exotic class item at all, do not worry. This build works exceptionally well. Still, it's at like 95% functionality if you just go ahead and use the Surturacne's Facade Exotic Hunter Helmet, which is much more easily acquirable and target farmable, which is really nice. The only thing you'd be missing out on if you don't have the Surturacne Inmost Light class item combo is the bonus ability regeneration specifically for your grenade, because the bonus ability regeneration that you get from Inmost Light for your other two abilities, your melee and your class ability, is actually inconsequential, as you'll see why as we get deeper into the build. As far as the setup for this build, this is going to be an archetype of your typical roll punch hunter setup, okay? So for super, you can honestly go whatever you want, and we'll kind of get to what your super choice should be in a bit, depending on what activity you're playing and what the rest of your loadout looks like. On our class ability, we've got our Gambler's Dodge, so that every time you dodge, no longer has to be by an enemy anymore, by the way. Gambler's Dodge actually got a buff in that fashion, where now when you use your Gambler's Dodge, it refunds melee ability energy, period, even if you're not next to an enemy. However, the energy ability refund percentage that you get is now dependent on how much you have built into your melee stat. For this build, that is a non-issue because we're actually dumping as many points into our melee stat as humanly possible. We want to get it to as close to 200 as we can, getting it to 200 if possible. And if your armor does not allow you to get to 200 yet, I'll show you some ways that we can kind of get around that and get even closer to 200 once we get into the mod section of the video. The rest of the abilities, we've got Combination Blow. You guys know what Combination Blow does. Hit something with Combination Blow. If it's the final blow of Combination Blow, you accrue a stack of Combination Blow, get up to 3 stacks. You get bonus melee damage for every stack that you have, and if you land a final blow with Combination Blow, you also refund your class ability. However, Combination Blow no longer just automatically refunds a full class ability now, it now refunds an amount of class ability energy based on your class stat. The number that we need to hit to make sure that we get a full amount of class ability energy for a final blow with Combination Blow is 70 on the dot. There are no benefits to being above 70, and certainly no benefits for this build specifically of getting even above 100. So ideally in a perfect armor stat setup, you want 70 class ability so that every time you land a final punch, your class ability is going to come back. For abilities, obviously, we're going to use Grapple Grenade. Not only great for mobility, however, also has the grapple melee portion. And the grapple melee is really cool because the grapple melee counts as powered melee damage for everything in the game that concerns itself with powered melee damage. So that's going to include armor mods that proc based on powered melee damage. Things like heavy-handed that generate orbs of power when you get a melee final blow. Mods like hands-on the helmet that give you bonus super energy when you get a melee final blow. And it also gets its damage improved by the melee stat, and its damage improved by combination blow stacks, because combination blow stacks improve all melee damage. So even though grapple is in the grenade slot, it has its grapple melee damage improved by all sources of melee damage buffing. That also is the case for our 1-2 punch shotgun, which is absolutely a weapon you're going to be wanting to use in this build. As you might have recalled in the intro, I shotgun Carl right before I did my grapple melee. That's because it skyrockets that grapple melee hit by stacking with the melee stat buff and by stacking with the combination blow X3 buff. Now, for our aspects with this build, you might think we want something along the lines of Stylish Executioner, because every time we land a final blow on a debuffed enemy, we go invisible. And even though it doesn't say it on here, when we melee attack after going invisible from Stylish Executioner, we get bonus damage on said melee attack. However, I have found that my favorite version of this build, and the one that I absolutely loved using in the contest mode raid and all the other activities in Destiny, starts with Threaded Spectre, so that every time we activate our class ability, we leave behind a strand clone. Everyone knows what Threaded Spectre does. It's absolutely insane for any content where you're trying to survive in, because it means you basically never get shot at by anything, and it's also really nice for team play, because it means your teammates never get shot at by everything. Because if every time we land a final blow with our melee ability, we fully refund our class ability, and then we can use our class ability to fully refund our melee, and we can just do something like this. We create a clone every single time we dodge in between killing enemies and hitting enemies. And our combination blow is already at X3, so I can hit a little grapple grenade. That's even without 1-2 punch, 2,282 damage. It's very easy to get into a spot with this build where you're set up and ready to pump out huge damage numbers, so you can completely just one-shot champions, wyverns, any tanky enemy, mini bosses, anything like that. The other class ability we're going with is Ascension, for a couple of reasons. Ascension has received a lot of tweaks that make it synergize with other parts of the game and therefore make it significantly stronger, because using Ascension, even though it's technically not a class ability, it consumes your class ability energy. Everything in the game that activates based on class ability activation now activates based on Ascension activation. So that is applicable both for our Gambler's Dodge. So if I go ahead and melee this enemy and then I ascend, it still refunds my class ability, because using Ascension also procs Gambler's Dodge. As another example, Ascension will also now proc class ability-based armor mods, so things like Reaper and Bomber in Powerful Attraction. Shortly using your class ability, your next weapon final blow spawns an orb of power. So if I hop over here and I ascend and I shoot that guy, as you can see, Reaper procs based off of him. And then if I grab my rally flag again, Ascension will scoop up that orb for me because it also procs Powerful Attraction. Also creates a Threaded Spectre because it counts as a class ability activation. Threaded Spectres are created on class ability usage. So Ascension is basically a class ability through and through. Furthermore, jolts everything, so a very easy way to debuff targets, and amplifies us and all allies. And Amplified, in my opinion, is one of the strongest buffs in the entire game right now, especially for survivability, because not only does it give you bonus damage resistance, it makes you faster, but it also makes enemies less accurate towards you. I know it's kind of vague, like, okay, but like how much less accurate are they towards me? It basically turns them into Star Wars stormtroopers. Like, when you are amplified, enemies cannot aim. There's basically like a gravitational, or like the inverse of a gravitational pull around your body for bullets. So like bullets come at you and they like almost go like this. That's how crazy Ascension is. I also love using Ascension on this build because ascending in any facet of life is generally always a good thing, especially when you ascend in the browser that you use on your computer. For the longest time, I was a Google Chrome user, and eventually I just got sick of how much RAM it was soaking up on my PC, and it made my Destiny performance drop a little bit, which is why I got y'all with the sponsor of today's build, Opera GX. I'm gonna keep it short. It's a browser, doesn't take up too much of your RAM like Google Chrome does. It's Chromium based though, which means you can automatically import all of your bookmarks and save settings from Google Chrome into Opera GX. It has things that gamers love, like a built-in ad blocker, so you get less ads on Twitch and YouTube. And if you want to support me, it takes 2 clicks to download, and I get $3 for every single person that downloads it. So if you just want to support me, you want to help me out, you appreciate the builds, I would really appreciate you clicking on the link in the description, downloading real quick. You don't have to if you don't want to, but it would mean a lot to me. Back to the build. Don't want to waste too much of your time. Fragments wise, faster protection, obviously, plus 10 melee stat, which is really nice for this build. That equates to approximately a 3% bonus to all of our melee damage if we are over 200, which obviously for this build we are. Just makes it that much easier to get to 200 melee. We are also going Facet of Dawn. Powered melee hits against targets makes us radiant, and powered melee final blows makes us and all of our nearby allies radiant. Unfortunately, we do lose 10 melee stat. Does get offset by Facet of Dawn, but being able to buff all of our weapons on powered melee hits is too good to pass up. Another really cool aspect of Facet of Dawn. Wait, why did I get Radiant right there? So, here's what's confusing me right now. I think this is a bug. Powered melee hits. It is powered melee hits. I think this is a bug because technically, even though I have Combination Blow up, Combination Blow doesn't proc unless you actually get the final blow on the enemy. So this might get tweaked. Bungie might discover this and might fix it. Or if it's not a bug, then it'll stay in the game. But my understanding of how Combination Blow is that for Combination Blow to actually go off and subsequently for it to be count as a powered melee, it actually has to be the final hit on the target. But what's really cool about Combination Blow is that if you have Combination Blow buff on the left side of your buffs bar, even if you don't have the Combination Blow melee ability up, it turns all of your basic melees into powered melee abilities as long as you have the Combination Blow up. Historically in Destiny, at least pre-Edge of Fate, not having the Combination Blow buff currently active, but having the Combination Blow melee up, if it did not get a final blow on the enemy, historically, that has not counted as a powered melee final blow for the purposes of activating things like that. Maybe they changed it. Maybe it's intentional. Maybe it was an accident and it might get fixed. However, what is absolutely intentional, what absolutely does work, is if you don't have your Combination Blow melee up or active, but you do have the Combination Blow buff, does count as powered melee hit, you can reliably expect that to stay no matter what. Furthermore, grapple melee also counts as a powered melee final blow for the purposes of the Facet of Dawn. I got way too many buffs from using it though, so you won't see it, but just trust. Moving to our other fragments, next I want to talk about the Facet of Blessing, where melee final blows start health regeneration. Now, admittedly, this is not that useful for the Combination Blow aspect of your Combination Blow chaining melees, because Combination Blow already gives you a pretty respectable heal anytime you get a final blow. However, this is also applicable to grapple melee as well, so it just overall makes it so that all of your abilities have a way to heal you. I like it a lot. If you feel like that's a little bit overkill and the activities that you play aren't going to require that many healing options or healing activation options, rather, you can totally sub this out for something else if you would like. The next fragment I want to talk about is the Facet of Courage, which I like a lot because it gives us plus 10 to our grenade stat, which is another stat that we care about in conjunction with our class stat and our melee stat. The reason we care about our grenade stat a pretty decent amount is because, like I said, in the Edge of Fate, the stat system got reworked, and all ability regeneration rates are now tied to stats. And that also includes things like Inmost Light, which is going to be significantly regenerating our grenade ability every single time that we cast a different ability or use a different ability. And I actually noticed something while I was talking about the Facet of Dawn that's honestly kind of crazy for this build. So every time we cast a grenade, we get empowered abilities, obviously, because that's proccing Heart of Inmost Light. But that whole unpowered / powered melee thing, where, again, I don't know for certain if this is supposed to be counted as a melee hit while our melee charge is up. However, it does not consume our melee charge, and therefore it doesn't actually use Combination Blow, and our Combination Blow buff is not up on our left side of our screen, actually counting as a powered melee hit for the purposes of Facet of Dawn. But in any case, for whatever reason, it is counted as a powered melee hit for Facet of Dawn. It's also counted as a powered melee hit for our Heart of Inmost Light, because as you can see here, when I do regular normal melee punches, even though I don't have Combination Blow on my bar, and I'm not actually consuming the melee charge and utilizing Combination Blow, it is giving me empowered abilities on the left side of my screen, as you can see. So it's also working for Heart of Inmost Light as well. And empowered abilities is crazy for juicing up our grenade, because Inmost Light is, of course, going to give us grenade ability regeneration while we have empowered abilities up, and it's going to be tethered to our grenade stat. So the higher our grenade stat is, the faster that Inmost Light is going to spike our grenade when we have empowered abilities, and empowered abilities ×2. And obviously our grenade is exceptionally important to this build, considering it is our big one-shot move because of the grapple melee. Furthermore, once we get deeper into the Edge of Fate and you have access to higher tier armor that can have significantly higher stats and more favorable stat distributions where you can kind of pick and choose what stats that you have, we actually want to get the grenade stat over 100 if we can, because grapple melee has its damage not only increased by going over 100 in the melee stat, but because it also counts as a grenade, it also has its damage increased by going over 100 in the grenade stat. So you can buff the damage of grapple melee through 2 different stats, and I'll prove that to you right now. All right, so if I grapple and hit this Legionnaire, I will do 389 damage. And then if I come over here into my stats and I get my grenade over 100 stats. So now our grenade is currently at 113 stat points. And then I'll go ahead and swing again with more grenade stat. Now I do 422 grenade damage. So again, grenade stat and melee stat, both over 100, buffing grapple melee. Now, if you have to pick between the two, you want to get as close to 200 melee as possible before you start worrying about going over 100 grenade, because the melee stat increases damage and stacks with other damage increase buffs multiplicatively, whereas the grenade stat bonus damage stacks additively. And so what I mean by that is the bonus damage that you get from the melee stat will compound significantly more with other melee damage buffs, things like Combination Blow and 1-2 Punch, than bonus damage from the grenade stat will. Good lord, I am a yapper. Anyway, with the Facet of Courage being utilized in this build, the actual benefit that Facet of Courage gives to us is not inherently that amazing. Don't get me wrong, your Arc, Solar, and Void abilities deal increased damage to targets afflicted with darkness debuffs, which is great for our Combination Blow, so our Combination Blow can deal bonus damage. The only thing is that we don't have that many ways to apply a darkness debuff with this build. The only real way is by grapple meleeing something to apply Unravel to it, and then our light abilities will apply bonus damage. So it gets a little bit of use, especially for like really tanky targets. However, the reason we run it is primarily for that plus 10 grenade stat. It helps us with the grenade refund, and eventually, hopefully, once we get better stats, will help us with bonus grenade damage and subsequently bonus grapple melee damage. Another reason we run it too is just because there's not that many other fragments that would be that much better for this build, with exception to if you use a lot of Void and Strand weapons, then you could potentially sub this out for the Facet of Bravery, where defeating targets with grenade final blows gives you volatile rounds to your Void weapons. Grenade final blows also are procced from grapple melee, so that will in fact work. And defeating targets with powered melee final blows, which is both your Combination Blow and your grapple melee will give you unraveling rounds to your strand weapons. So if you use a lot of void and strand weapons, then you could probably make a good argument to swap out courage for bravery. However, if you're not using void or strand weapons, then I would say take courage, at the very least just for the 10 bonus grenade set that it gives you. Final fragment of the build is the faceted purpose, where anytime you pick up an orb of power, you get a buff based on the equipped super that you have. And this is where I want to talk about our actual super. You can genuinely go whatever super you want for this build, depending on what buff you want out of the faceted purpose. This build gets most of its mileage out of the combination blow and grapple damage buffs. It gets most of its survivability from the woven mail and ascension and threaded specter taking away aggro. So you can go damage if you want to have bonus damage. You can go something more mobility based like Storm's Edge or Silk Strike, so you get infinite grapples so you can keep on ripping. You can go something more crowd control-y like Silence and Squall or Shadow Shot Deadfall. It really does boil down to what buff you want on your faceted purpose. It also, to a certain degree, boils down to what element your primary ammo weapon is. And the reason I mention that is explained in our armor mod setup. We're going to start with Dynamo, which reduces your super cooldown when you use your class ability near targets. That counts not only for your Gambler's Dodge, but also for Ascension activations like we discussed previously. Also a hands-on mod where we get bonus super energy on melee kills. Pretty obvious why we're running this. And also Harmonic Siphon, where we create an orb of power on rapid weapon final blows, matching the element of our currently equipped super. So you can either choose your super based on the super itself, you can choose your super based on what buff you want from orb of power pickup through the faceted purpose, or you can choose it based on what element of primary ammo weapon you're using so that you can generate orbs of power on multi-kills with said weapon. Once you get a tier 4 or tier 5 helmet as well, and you get 11 energy, you'll also then be able to slot a kinetic siphon in here as well while still being able to maintain these other mods. Down on the gloves, we're going with a heavy-handed mod, powered melee final blows create orbs of power, and then we're going with 2 melee font mods, so that anytime we're armor charged, anytime we pick up an orb of power, we get 10 seconds of armor charge. We get 20 bonus melee stats per copy of melee font that we have. So since we have 2 melee font mods on, we will get 40 bonus melee stat, which will take our 154 melee stat up to 194. Now, if you're in a position where the melee stat on all of your armor is so good that you can already get close to 200 naturally and you don't need fonts to help push you there, you can either sub out these melee fonts for grenade fonts so that you can get even more bonus grapple melee damage through the grenade stat. Or if your stat setup is absolutely insane and you can get 200 melee stat and really high grenade stat just off stats alone, then you can instead sub both of these mods out for double impact induction, where causing damage with a powered melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown, which of course procs based on combination blow and also procs based on grapple melee, which means grapple melee refunds itself, which is pretty cool. Down on the chest piece, nice and simple, concussive dampener as well as damage resistance mods depending on whatever you are fighting. Boots is going to be an absolution mod to reduce all ability cooldowns every time we pick up an orb of power, and double innervation mods to reduce grenade cooldown every time we pick up an orb of power. Now you might be wondering why we're running absolution, because don't we already get full melee ability energy when we use our class ability, and then we get full class ability energy when we use our melee? Why do we need to get energy for those abilities from picking up orbs? It's because we don't. The reason we are running this is because if I pull up the Destiny Data Compendium, dang, look at how fast that loads on Opera GX. Link in the description. I'm sorry, I had to. If I come to Armor Mods, if we look here, if we run 3 copies of Innervation, we get 15% grenade ability energy for an Orb of Power pickup. Actually, hold up. I might be optimizing this poorly. Hold up. We're gonna do a little live demonstration to figure out what the best combo is based on math. So if I see Innervation here, 1 copy gives me 10% grenade ability energy back per orb of power pickup. If I put on a second copy, I get an extra 3%. And then if I put on a third copy, I get an additional 2%. And then if I come to Absolution, 1 copy of Absolution gives me 5% grenade energy. 2 copies gives me 7.5%, and 3 copies gives me 10%. So the happiest place you can be is to run 2 copies of Innervation to get 13%, and then 1 copy of Absolution for the additional 5, so you get 18% grenade ability energy refund per orb of power pickup. And that's actually going to be even more, because that is based on having 70 grenade stat. So if you can get 100 grenade stat, you'll actually get significantly more per orb of power pickup. To contrast that, if we did triple Innervation, we would only get 15%. If we did triple Absolution, we would only get 10%. We can't even really fit that anyway. And if we did 2 Absolution along with 1 Innervation, we would only get 17.5%, because 7.5% for 2, 10% 0.5% for one. So we get 0.5% more by actually running the double innervation and one absolution. Because absolution gives us no other benefits for the melee and class ability aspects, right? Finally, class item, Reaper, so that orbs of power generation anytime we get a weapon final blow after we use our class ability, both Gambler's Dodge and Ascension, which is also applicable to Powerful Attraction to scoop up orbs, which is really nice because then scooping up the orbs with Powerful Attraction automatically procs all this stuff and automatically procs the Facet of Purpose, and then obviously Bomber, so that every time we use our class ability, we reduce our grenade cooldown, which is really nice with this build because considering, just watch my grenade. Considering this build is all melee punch, melee punch, melee punch. Then I get to grapple again. And then melee punch. Like, that combo, shotgun, grapple, melee, nuke something for almost the same amount of damage as Celestial Nighthawk Golden Gun. Yeah, you get to do that basically every, like, 3-4 seconds. An additional thing that I want to showcase is if you are ever in a sticky situation in a piece of content and you're about to die and all you need is survivability in that particular moment, and you want to conserve a little bit of ability energy, Grapple Grenade actually has a really interesting thing about it, where if you activate it and then immediately cancel it, it immediately refunds half of the charge. But what's really cool about this is it still counts as a grenade ability activation, which means it does proc the Spirit of Surturacne, which means it will give you Woven Mail. So just to demonstrate that again, if I get a kill on this guy, I'll do it. Like, let's say I'm about to die. I'm like, oh no, I'm one shot. I need some DR real quick. But I don't want to grapple into that direction because there's a bunch of enemies. All I have to do is that real quick. Half grenade charge still up. Woven Mail 7, 6, 5. You get the idea. So like I said, another key thing with this build, it's not a necessity. In fact, in most pieces of content, you will not need this because everything is going to get one shot by your grapple melees and your X3 combination blow anyway. But if you're in really high-end content where you've got genuinely very, very, very tanky enemies, 1-2 punch shotgun can be a great thing to add on to this build. Hitting an enemy with every pellet in a shot increases melee damage for a short duration, which of course also applies to your grapple melee. So let me take this guy's shield off. So 1-2 punch, grapple, melee, we hit for 1200. And if I do not do it with 1-2 punch, then I hit him for 513 plus 575, so it's a little bit less. A few things I want to talk about with 1-2 punch, though, on the shotgun that's a bit of a learning curve with this build. And actually, it's a piece of advice for grapple grenade, just period. The thing about grapple grenade, and actually more importantly grapple melee, is that grapple melee does not become available to use immediately after you swing your grapple grenade. So a bit of a learning curve with this build is kind of getting a feeling for the timing that grapple melee becomes available after you use the grenade. Because if you stare at the bottom right, you'll notice when I use my grenade, it takes about a half second for the combination blow icon to transform into the grapple melee icon. So, a mistake that people might have with this build sometimes, at least I did for sure when I was kind of getting into the rhythm of this build, is you might be right next to an enemy and you want to hit a 1-2 punch shotgun and then grapple and then try and immediately grapple melee. But if you press your melee button too early right after you use your grapple, it'll just pull you out of the grapple and do your regular melee. So you want to make sure that you do have a little bit of patience to make sure that grapple melee does appear in the bottom left. Eventually, you'll just get comfy with the build and comfy with the timing, and you won't actually have to look down there. You'll just know when it's ready to go. But that is a big piece of advice I have for this build. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting a lot of grapple melee big hit potential, especially at close ranges where you're probably going to really need it and be relying on it. Another gigantic piece of advice I have for this build, it is probably the biggest tip that I can give you for this build if you are utilizing a 1-2 punch shotgun with it, involves your settings, which I know sounds a little bit odd for a build that settings could play a role, but it's absolutely gigantic. So I want to show you guys something. If you have combination blow available and you swing your fist, you notice how my fist, it's very tough to see because the fist goes across so quickly, but you see how there's that blue arcy energy across my fist when it's swinging? That indicates that I'm trying to use the combination blow melee ability, and it will activate, it will incorporate combination blow and consume the melee charge and give me a combination blow stack if it lands a final blow on an enemy. However, if you go into your settings and you utilize the charged melee, uncharged melee settings for your melee, which is basically going to make it so that uncircumstantially, no matter how close you are to an enemy, even if you're in basic melee range, it will use your powered melee over your regular melee, which is actually the good choice for a lot of builds. It is actually a bad choice for this build because the charged melee, uncharged melee has this really weird interaction if you have your keybinds like that, where, sure, if you do your melee ability, like normal, it will use your charge melee instead of your uncharged melee ability. But if you melee immediately after you shoot a weapon, it will not use your charge melee ability. It will always do uncharge, even if your charge is full. So if you notice, when I melee right after I shoot my hand cannon, it's actually not sparking with the arc energy anymore, which indicates that it is actually not using combination flow. And I'll kind of show you right now. So if I get this guy really weak, typically if I melee him, my combination blow is up. I should get a stack of combination blow and it should consume the charge. Oh, come on, man. And I should get a stack of combination blow and it should consume the charge, right? But if I shoot my hand cannon and then immediately melee him, no, it got the final blow, but it didn't consume the combination blow charge and it didn't give me a stack of combination blow. Which is just this really weird unintended effect of having your keybind set up like that. Whereas, like, obviously, it should actually work that way. So, just a good piece of advice. What you want to do is, with this build, you want to make sure that your keybind is auto melee. You want to make sure you're using auto melee for your melee charge. And the reason that's so important is because typically with a 1-2 punch shotgun, you're also going to be utilizing it to get 1-2 punch and then apply that to your combination blow melee as well, right? But that is obviously very wonky if you shoot and then melee immediately after, but it's not actually applying your combination blow melee. So if you have your settings set up like that, then you never have to worry about combination blow not applying. So just a big tip, make sure you have that set up. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you didn't know that before watching this video. Hopefully that helps out a little bit. In terms of your other two weapons, genuinely, you can use literally whatever you want. And you can really even use whatever special you want. Like I said, 1-2 punch is only really a necessity if you're dealing with extremely tanky targets. You're trying to do like boss damage with this even. Otherwise, you could use a different special if you want. Obviously, this build gets mostly everything done in the entire game with just the ability kit itself, which is why it's so good. The only other weapon that I really want to mention for this build that is not necessary, you don't have to use it if you don't want to or if you don't have it. It also is going to put you in a double special position if you want to take advantage of 1-2 punch and this new weapon, is the Navigator, specifically with its catalyst. As we saw before in the intro of the video, this thing makes your boss damage capabilities go through the roof, because since you can make a grapple tangle point with the Navigator, that effectively gives you infinite grapple grenades, which means if you have your 1-2 punch and you have your combination blow ×3, then you can just activate your grapple melee all day long on a boss target and hit what is effectively Celestial Nighthawk Golden Guns back to back to back to back every single time you can grapple. Now, like I said, this is not essential for the build at all. This is only for like min-max nuke boss purposes. So if you're not playing, like, you can do this in a raid boss DPS phase if you have the proper setup, killing ads and stuff like that, but this isn't like a core thing. So if you don't have the Navigator, please don't feel like you can't use this build to its full potential and its full effectiveness. The final thing that I want to talk about with this build is the artifact. I was hyping up Woven Mail earlier in the video where I said it actually has an additional benefit that it gives to this build at the current moment beyond just damage resistance. And that is actually Shield Crush, an artifact perk in the last column where while you have Woven Mail, your melee recharges faster and deals increased damage, which is so easy for this build because as we use our grapple grenade to do the grapple melee, it automatically gives us Woven Mail through Sword Arachne, which automatically procs Shield Crush, which automatically gives us that bonus melee damage on our grapple melee. And it's also going to apply that same bonus melee damage to our combination blow hits as well. So it's kind of dual purpose in that regard. Furthermore, while you are amplified, your grenade also recharges faster and deals increased damage, which means if we can get over 100 grenade stat, which also buffs grapple melee, as an example, if we go ahead and hit Ascension, so we're amplified, and then we grapple, which gives us Woven Mail, and then we grapple melee, we have Woven Mail giving us the melee damage buff to make our grapple melee stronger, and we have amplified to give us the grenade damage buff, which also makes our grapple melee stronger because it's technically in the grenade slot. So Shield Crush actually buffs your grapple melee in 2 different ways, which is really cool. And, oh, that's right. As promised, I said I would show you guys the shader that I'm currently using because I know I'm going to get a ton of questions about it. It's my favorite shader in the game at the current moment. I think it looks absolutely spectacular. It's called Chill Beats, and it looks even better on weapons. Like, for example, it's pretty much, I have it on all my weapons, basically. It's like this animated shader. It's really cool. And it's available at the current moment through Eververse. If you go to the store and you go to Seasonal, and you get the Fighting Lion set. It also comes alongside a Fighting Lion ornament and a Fighting Ion Ghost projection, I guess is how you would say that. But I really bought just the shader because I really like the shader. So, this is the build that I've been using nonstop for basically the past 6 months. That has only gotten better with time. This is the build that got me through the contest mode raid. This is the build that I will be using for the foreseeable future for basically all pieces of difficult content. And it's also one of the most fun builds to play in the entire game. That also has copious amounts of ways to buff up your team and makes you a great team player. Will definitely get you invited to raid night from your friends, clannies, people you meet on LFG. Go try it on, check it out. It's spectacular. I hope you enjoyed. Please be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to see all of my future builds. Quick reminder, Opera GX link down in the description below. If you appreciate this build and want to get me $3 by downloading it, it'd be absolutely awesome. I think you'd like the browser as well too. Everyone in my live stream, twitch.tv/Mactics, by the way, where we film all these live, has been downloading the Opera GX browser to support me, and they have been saying that they absolutely love it, and it's a massive improvement over their previous browser. So, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a great day.